origins of Morse code came after Samuel E. Morse missed the death of his wife due to the lag in communication, and had begun to work on a device that would change communication as we know it. Morse code. What hath God wrought? Originally, Morse and Vail's plan had been to print the codes onto a paper which was to be taken and translated by the operators. However, soon those who used Morse's system discovered they could listen to the raw signal that was being received and make a better translation from this raw signal. This discovery eventually became a standard among telegraphs. Despite being limited to land, Morse's code and telegraph ended up playing an important role in history while still in its infant state.
In the early 1880s, the telephone was considered a newfangled contraption. Boy operators manned the switchboards in those days, and it was an adventure to be able to talk with friends or relatives on the other side of town. The telephone at last was filling a deep human need. The need of people separated from one another to talk with each other. Soon, alert girl operators replaced the boys. New types of instruments were developed, and the telephone grew up with a growing America. Dial service was rapidly being introduced to help handle the increased volume of calls. As the calls increased, more operators were needed. More calls to handle meant more jobs to do, and more people to fill those jobs. This has been the story all through the development of the telephone. For instance, in the days when we had little or no dial service, the Bell system had 270,000 employees. By the time 70% of the telephones were dialed, there were 600,000 employees in cities across the nation. Finally, they wanted their voices to span the oceans. And they did. The equipment that makes this service possible is among the most complex that man has ever devised. When you dial a number, the equipment obediently receives the information, stores it up, and remembers it. It searches out an electrical pathway for your call, choosing the one that is most suitable at a given instant. Used by telephone operators in dialing long-distance calls. When the people in the Englewood area with one and two...
There were only two phones in existence at that time. The biggest issue in that first call, we didn't know it was going to be historic in any way at all. We were only worried about one thing.
Why don't we build a cellular system that's the way it ought to be, that's personal, portable? We shut down engineering in the company. We demonstrated the system in New York. We had a press conference scheduled for the afternoon, but we had been approached by a journalist, and I decided, well, why don't we give him a real demonstration? A real demonstration would be walking down the street, and that's exactly what we did.
3 times longer exposure. The iPhone 7 camera has 6-element 1.8 aperture lens and a 12-megapixel sensor that is 60% faster. More starting at $769.